Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0. A quite surreal scoreline there. I'm joined by Stephen Howson. Give me your initial thoughts on what is United's worst ever defeat in the Premier League era.
My initial thoughts are redacted is my initial thoughts.
So you can't say any of that. Okay, what about the first thoughts that you've had that you are allowed to say? Because even though to me, I spoke to Jay, I spoke to Andy, this doesn't necessarily feel quite as bad as the 5-0 from last season because of the factors surrounding the club and the how things are going under Ten Hag. How is it possible that this team can still go and put in performances like that when it seemed like we were past this?
I think it's fatigue, and I just answered somebody on Twitter saying the same thing, saying it's fatigue, and there's some people arguing with that. But what else can it be, Joe, right? I've seen this team do some unbelievable performances, right? Now, quick fight maths. We just beat Barcelona. Barcelona just beat Madrid. Madrid just smacked 5 past Liverpool. How do we lose 7-0? That doesn't add up in that little whatever. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, United have had some massive games, including that Barcelona game, including the cup final against the Barcodes on Sunday. But it feels like it has to be fatigue. Like, we know what the manager's capable of. We know what the players are capable of. That wasn't it. So what's the extra factor at play in here? And the only thing that's different between the two sides at the moment is we're still competing on all fronts and they're absolutely done in all competitions. So that literally was just Liverpool's cup final right there. Well done. Trophy parades tomorrow around the docks. Sweet. Traffic will be a bit busy.
Just on that then, because I agree, obviously, I think there's a lot of things that played into it. I think a couple of their goals, when you watch them back, the amount of bobbles and ricochets and deflections that sort of fell in their path time after time.
And 8 shots on target, Joe.
8 shots on target, but that doesn't explain certain performances tonight. And one thing, if it is fatigue, how do we go about rectifying it and making sure this doesn't happen again and not letting this season sort of slide away? Because we aren't playing any less games between now and the end of April. How does Ten Hag stop that from happening again? Because even if it's not 7-0 to Liverpool, if it's 2-0 to Betis and 2-0 to Fulham, then our season's over as well. So what do you think the next steps are here? Because we can't have that happen week in, week out.
I don't know if you can do anything at this stage of the season now. I don't know if you can try and maximise the rest that they're getting, try and, really take your foot completely, go neutral in training. For a couple of weeks. We've got the international break coming up soon, and I hope everyone's got a little bit of a knock, if you know what I'm saying. That's the only thing I think that the club can do. There isn't really anything else. You've just got to kind of hope that you're going to be able to pull something out of the bag. I don't really see any other way around this. The fact is that the team's been running to the ground. We saw a result very similar to this with City at the start of the season, where we shipped a right load of goals. You're like, damn, fucking hell's happened here? And then we went on a massive run. The manager obviously learned a little bit about the squad in that. I don't know how much he's going to learn about the squad in this. I don't necessarily believe that he got the selection correct, but even if he'd have got the selection that I thought might have been able to do a bit of a better job, it's not a 7-goal swing, mate. You know what I mean? It might have been 1-goal swing tops, and at absolute best. I know it's fine margins in football, but 7-0 is not a fine margin in any way, shape, or form. Liverpool are a team, when they get going, they've done it themselves, to be fair. We've seen Villa smack 7 past them last year. It does happen, and I think the way certainly some modern teams, certainly teams that aren't set up to be low block and totally damage limitation. It's not in the DNA of United. It's not in the DNA of Liverpool. So when you lose and the other teams, going for a bit of a purple patch and gets their head up a little bit, you're going to get a bit of a kicking.
It does seem as though this is something we're susceptible to, doesn't it? Because I know Liverpool had that 7-2, which is obviously same goals as today. But United 4 goals against Brighton, 6 goals against City, 7 today, 5 and 4 last time against Liverpool as well. It does feel as though there are still portions of this team where conceding 4, 5, 6 goals isn't that abnormal to them. Do you think that's something that still needs sort of knocking out of us? Because at 3-0 down, it felt to me like they gave up. And they just went, we've lost it. Well, fuck it. Anything goes now. Let's get bookings. Let's drop off our man. Let's stop tracking back. Is that a concern? Or do you almost think they might have saved a bit of energy in those last 30 minutes? Because to me, 7-0 it goes beyond I'm tired and we've lost. That is like, I've given up, doesn't it? And not just one player. That's a team saying, we're done here.
There was a little bit of that, it felt. But I'll throw you back to 2012. I think the game was actually in 2011, but 2012. Manchester City put 6 past us, right? And at 3-1, we probably could have called it a day. I think Roy Keane talks about this. Take your beatings, right? When he was Sunderland manager, because he did the exact same thing. When he lost, they lost some big games. I think they lost a few 4s and 5s, especially when he was in the Premier League. Because teams can get a roll on you if their tails are up. And that's why you see so much of low blocks in the Premier League, because they work and... it's a valid tactic, but in some clubs' DNA, it obviously wasn't in Roy Keane's DNA to be able to put his team into a low block. It's clearly not in Ten Hag's. It hasn't been in Klopp's. We've seen some mega high-scoring games on the back of that. Like in 2011-12, it wasn't in Fergie's DNA. City had 7 shots on target that day, very eerily reminiscent of the 8 shots on target Liverpool have had today, and everything has flown in. It was very, very similar way that game went. Half-time at 1-0, honestly, thought it was in it. Jaden texted me and said, score, do you reckon? I said, 2-2 from now. Is that half-time? So we were in the fight. I thought we were a bit sloppy in the first half and not quite ourselves, but it's Anfield, it's Liverpool away, it's to be expected, and Ten Hag's got this knack of like getting an extra gear out of us. We didn't look like we got out of first gear at all in the first half, but actually we might have put it into neutral in the second half because we didn't go up through the gears and we just stopped. And I think that's why you ended up getting, the number of chances that they had against us at the other end. I just think it's a symptom of a particular style of football, is that if it ain't your day, it really ain't your day. And it hurts. It hurts because it's Liverpool. And obviously, it looks like Newcastle have completely crumbled now. They had the cup final. They can fucking do one now. Spurs look like they're going to let them off the hook because they're shit. I couldn't see this lot ended up in the top 4,
Yeah.
After how garbage they've been all season. They're putting a bit of a solid run together and everyone around them is shit. And... yeah, it's a shitter. So,
not necessarily in terms of how this has knocked us mentally, but then if this is a sign of a physical and maybe mental fatigue, do you think that there is a way to fix this? And maybe not what is the way, but do you think we can turn this around and get past Betis and get past Fulham? And, obviously looking ahead in the league is probably a silly thing to do, but, we've still got winnable games in cups. Presumably, Ten Hag will have some sort of plan to try and sort of bring us out of this. You would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope that him and the sports science department are able to identify quite how tired these teams are. And I actually had a really good conversation last week with Whoop, the little fitness fella.
Yeah, fitness.
You're not on that yet, are you?
I'm not yet, no, but maybe I will be one day if you tell me how good this conversation was. Tell me what I learned from him.
Well, I spoke to them about our footy team, and we're talking about potentially doing some stuff where they can collect and use the data of ordinary lads that are also playing football on the side. I think they've got Virgil van Dijk, ironically. They've got Tuanzebe and a couple of others at United, but they're not allowed to use their data. But they were talking about different sort of metrics that can be tracked and stuff like that. And one of the things that Whoop is amazing at is finding out if you're overtrained. Right. So I'd be interested to find out quite how many of United's squad are actually wearing this. Now, Tuan Zabier, remember when everyone thought it was an Apple Watch he was wearing? I believe you actually can wear a Whoop during play, and it doesn't have to be worn on the wrist. There's bicep bands, there's bicep sleeves, there's even shorts and vests that can all hold the tracker. And I don't know how many people realise that the players are already wearing GPS trackers throughout every game. You see the little bulge in the back of the neck that the players are wearing at the moment. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if players are going to start wearing 24-hour monitors like things like this, because one of the early signs of this level of fatigue is heart rate variability dropping, and also your resting heart rate increasing. And if you're seeing that across the board with several players, that's when the time to start easing off in training is. The old school way of the stuff Rio's spoken about is, they would wear them vests in games and they'd also wear them vests in training. But what it's not doing is seeing what your heart rate's doing in between training sessions. There's nothing to stop. I mean, like famously, the likes of Ronaldo would then go train after they'd been training, and they wouldn't have obviously been wearing the GPSs. So they have no idea of the level of intensity that those guys are doing or capable of, because all they're doing is collecting data through the training sessions that are at the club. Whereas something like the Whoop, you're going to be wearing it 24/7, and you're going to be able to see the ups, the downs, the peaks, the troughs. If someone you're going to be able to spot if someone's staying up till 4 a.m. playing PlayStation, because it's going to affect their sleep patterns and their recoveries and all this sort of stuff. So I'd be very interested to see if the club are using anything like that. And like I said, I know some of them are using it, but I don't believe the club are using it in full to be monitoring what's going on. But I would be very interested to find out if the club is doing anything like that or similar to that, where they're I mean, they might do it every day when they come in. They might just do resting heart rate every day. See what they're like, sit them down for 20 minutes and then get everyone's resting heart rate before, when they do a team meeting maybe. Yeah. So everyone's nicely settled. Just as a way to sort of have a baseline for where everyone's at, because that's the resting heart rate is the biggest indicator of where you're at. And if you're overtrained or you need a rest and all that sort of stuff, it will show on that ahead of a lot of things. And for me, rest is the only thing that I can identify. I think the players are tired. I think some of the players are tired. And the margins in the Premier League are so small that if someone's just not quite at it, the impact is going to be quite severe.
Yeah. I mean, it's mad, isn't it? It's one of those where Ten Hag has done such a good job in the past, after Brentford and Brighton, after City, after Villa, of putting these long runs together of good wins, good performances. Casemiro, there was suggestions maybe he was injured, and Shaw, obviously, and Varane both passed late fitness tests to play in the game. So he's absolutely got his work cut out, doesn't he? But maybe not short term. But do you trust Ten Hag as the man to turn anything around? Mentally, that's led to these sorts of results. Do you think he's the right guy to sort of take United out of this kind of performance?
Yeah, I mean, I did a video last week saying the wheels are going to come off us this season at some point.
Yeah,
and I think I even said it could even be this weekend against Liverpool. I've not fancied us all week, to be honest, to beat these. And I said, you need to take it on the chin, because it's going to happen, but you know what the manager's capable of and you know what the players are capable of. So when this run inevitably comes to an end, just remember it. Yeah. Just remember what they can do. Remember what the manager can do. Remember what you've seen from us this season. Now, it is a problem if we don't ever recover from this and it's just L's from here to the end of the season. Yeah, that's a fucking problem, because, winning a League Cup and coming ninth, it's not really going to cut it. But I imagine it's probably a blip. It might be a couple of weeks. You might see us, have a bit of a ropey week on the back end of this. But, yeah, inevitably, I think he gets it right. We've had to deal with, it's his first season. He's had all sorts of tumultuous shit going on within the club. He's had the Cristiano Ronaldo thing, the Harry Maguire thing, contract situations for all sorts of players. You had Marcus coming back from an injury where a lot of people were saying sell him at the start of the season, which is ludicrous. He's managed to ride that out. He's had Tony Marshall just banging a sick note and then just fuck off on holiday to the Maldives. He's had about as many distractions and problems as one manager's had to deal with, and he's still coming out there stoic, stone-faced, saying no problem, we'll cope with it. So do I believe in him? 100%. I'm behind him 100%. He needs a good summer, a good pre-season, and we're back at it. What was everyone's expectations at the start of the season, right? In fact, I went and had a look at the video we did where I had Arsenal coming 8th, which probably touch off there, I reckon. But
I don't think they'll finish 8th. No,
I had a look
you
at that.
probably got that wrong.
Yeah, I think it's probably a safe bet to say that one was a bit overcooked. So, but you ought to read the comments. United coming 6th at best. United top 4, delusional. Like, that's what all of the comments are saying. It's a fun read, actually. So maybe cheer yourself up by reading the comments and realising just how far we've come.
Yeah, good idea. Right, thank you, Steve, for joining us. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll be here tomorrow for the podcast with all the reaction to today's game and looking ahead to Real Betis. That's the thing. We ain't got time to wait now. We're playing again in 3 days. We've got to keep going, and we'll be here to cover all of that. So hit subscribe, like I said before. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a bit.